because I didn't think you had picked your second movie. I was going to tell you
picked it
should do
yesterday.
Cabin
Oh
in the
man, I
Woods.
love that movie.
But
I watched it 3 times. Sure, that's a good pick.
Gotcha. I just watched Tucker and Dale last night, so
Such a good movie, right?
so much better than The Descent. I'm just saying. So, but hi, you thought you caught me, but I just went with it because it was fun. So,
Yeah, but
because it's
I'm
a
doing it
preview
anyway.
for next week,
Exactly.
and we're actually doing our homework. So
early on time. What happened? Like, we're actually ahead of the game. We're not all going to be watching 10 movies in the same night.
Yeah.
Speak for yourself. I'm only like almost done with Van Helsing.
Oh yeah. I should break that up into like 3 watching sessions myself. Just kidding.
Oh yeah, it's rough.
Hey.
And we got to clarify. Like we're talking Wolverine Van Helsing, right?
Yeah.
And like which Addams family? I'm assuming it's the black and white one because it's Ben.
He didn't put a year. I assumed the one from 1991, and that's what I watched. And if that was the wrong one, then he can get fucked.
Then that's on him. Yeah. I'm gonna clarify that right now because I've been meaning to do that for like a week. So
it is the X-Men one then. Yes.
Yes. Hugh Jackman. Yeah, that's the one I meant.
The bad one.
I have to choose the second one soon. Like by today. There's just so many to choose from. Okay. Speaking of spooky things, the things that go bump in the night, right? Like the things that might be hiding behind a masquerade. We're going to be talking about the Dresden Files Masquerade and see, has that gone too far? Because that was a post on the subreddit by Calm Cicada 8805. And
good job.
And therefore, it was kind of an interesting topic. It got us arguing with each other. Therefore, it's good enough for an episode.
Right. Yeah. Look, man, we can do research, which takes time, and it's going to happen, or we can get something that is divisive enough, to generate discussion. And this was one of those things where maybe we don't even necessarily disagree in this case, right? But it definitely gave us some food for thought. I think a lot of us groaned when we were like, oh, wait a minute, heebie-jeebies. Like obviously the pun is terrible too. Like it's in a good way, right? The worse, the more terrible the pun is, the better it is. But still, there's plenty to discuss about why people still get taken into this. So, or do they?
Well, I think to start off on the painful topic, I think people are willing to believe plenty of things because not believing them is worse.
Well,
sure. that is the basic tenet of how the Masquerade works in the Dresden Files, right? Is that people don't want to believe, so therefore they will explain it away to an outrageous degree.
Well, like let's be real, right? So like, yes, you don't want to believe because then if you do believe, then monsters are real and you should be checking under the bed at night and check your closet and those rattly pipes that you keep dismissing and that sort of thing, right? But like at the same time, like let's be real, Andreas, like if I told you that New York was leveled and it wasn't by a bomb, but it was by a telekinetic squid monster, would you just be like, oh shit, that's crazy, who did that? Which billionaire teleported a giant squid monster into New York? Or would you be like, are you fucking with me right now?
I just asked how Musk did it.
Right. Yeah. You already know which one. Yeah. The one with the spaceships and possibly teleporters. But now he's got an idea for another company. Great. Of course
I would ask for evidence. I just think that after this Avengers level event, like I said in the pre-show, it's like at a minimum, and pretty much everyone in Chicago should know.
Yeah, well, that's one thing that I disagree with, right? Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I think that the evidence is going to be insurmountable, right? But I don't think that it's not like people can just recount the events of the night, right? First of all, like the vast majority of Chicago doesn't stay in downtown at night anyway on a regular day, right? Let alone if you know something's popping off. Like these guys were at home, bunkered down, sometimes literally, I'm sure, right? So it's not like somebody saw It's not like most of Chicago saw, Enya running around blasting buildings, right? That part I think they could be forgiven. Maybe somebody saw something fly overhead they didn't understand. Maybe somebody saw, or saw some shadows or heard some things or whatever that they couldn't explain, right? Obviously, some of the neighborhoods were getting ransacked, right? So like that's an attack, right? But to me, the like undeniable stuff that people wouldn't be able to sweep under the rug is that there's hundreds or thousands of Fomorians in the streets and dead cops, right? And that's just Dresden's group, right? Like I can only imagine certain sectors. Like, if this is crass, forgive me, but like there's been thought experiments of like what an invasion of America would look like, right? Everybody's seen Red Dawn, both of them, hopefully, that sort of thing. Like, certain cities, your gangsters are going to show up and defend their turf, right? And I got to imagine certain neighborhoods in Chicago are like that, right? So you're going to have places where the gangs were pinning down their territory. You've got obviously Dresden's people. A chunk of them were cops. I wouldn't even say a majority necessarily, but obviously a chunk of them were cops and that sort of thing. But you're going to have their dead in the streets just as much as you've got, all these Fomorians, that it's just like, wait, that's an octagon. Of course, they wouldn't know that, Dresden would have to tell them, but it's like, this guy's got tentacles.
What did happen to physical evidence? And maybe the physical evidence was taken away or somehow otherwise disintegrated. Like, the Fomor probably weren't creatures of like the Never Never and like holding themselves together with ectoplasm.
Right.
But it could be that the octagon bodies did disappear and we haven't been told that. Or it could be that there was people going through, taking the bodies and disposing them so other people couldn't find them, which would lead to more conspiracies on layers and layers.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think so. So like, there's three answers to that, right? In least likely to more likely, in my opinion. The least likely is you've got local Chicago volunteers, not because it's unlikely, obviously, to have Chicagoans helping out and that sort of thing, but I think that's just less likely, because if that was the case, you wouldn't be able to control the narrative, right? Next likely would be government volunteers of some kind. It's probably going to be National Guard or it's going to be FEMA. You just don't have an organization in my mind that can have that many people be on the ground that quickly to cover that up, right? Like, I can't imagine there's that many librarians or, reservist librarians on the weekend or whatever. And so, like, more likely, what if it's MAB? What if it, it's the council. They literally just, like, the Fae pop out of the Never Never and scoop the bodies into a bag of holding or into a portal and just be like, weird, what's all this blood stain? That's weird. And you probably have a ton of like, oh man, there's certainly more missing than dead confirmed, just because the bodies were taken and they're assumed lost in the rubble or something like that.
I mean, like, bodies of humans could be found somewhere unless they were like eaten. But they're
right.
The bodies
yeah,
of the
I mean,
monsters.
Some of them got stabbed, some of them got bitten, probably, that sort of thing. Some of them got oddly killed by a blunderbuss, which is like hasn't been used in a couple hundred years. So that's not, even the ones with gunshot wounds aren't, like traditional weapons, right? Like, I'm sorry, was Chicago invaded by, a Renaissance fair with a bunch of small cannons? Like, what the hell just happened? Yeah.
Wouldn't enough people have seen bodies, or even if they mostly got removed, or supernatural events to a point where even if it's not the whole Chicago, but Midtown, downtown, like hundreds of thousands of people, and when several people say something happened to people, like, wouldn't that be enough?
I guess that's where the heebie-jeebies come in. Like, it's just the ergot poisoning on a larger scale type of myth of like something happened. It was in the air, it was in the water. Everything that scared you that you saw wasn't real, and there's going to be a lot of people that is going to take that option.
Take that, because they don't.
Because I mean, the idea that there is a Titan that could literally squish me like an ant is terrifying. I can't handle that terrifying thought, and so it was just a delusion. It was just I got poisoned somehow. There's going to be a lot of people that, because the fear of being helpless like that is enough for them to have that cognitive distance.
Right.
in
Well,
terms of
but I mean, I think the other thing that needs to be referenced here is statistics, right? So first of all, I don't think as many as 100,000 people were involved, or certainly not in the downtown area, right? But even if 100,000 people were involved, like Chicago proper has something like 2.7 million people, and the Chicago metropolitan area, which is what everybody's going to reference when they're talking about it being like the third largest city and whatever, is 10 million people, right? So like even if 100,000 people like had this experience, they're not all talking to the news. They're not all talking about what they saw. And still 100,000 people puts it, like what, 1 in 100 at best, 1 in 100. So it's like you may not even know a guy who saw it, but you know a guy who knew a guy, if that makes sense, right? And so through this kind of filtering, that sort of stuff doesn't make it sound unreasonable to me. Like one of the other examples we used in the pre-show, right? So like if you didn't catch it, Watchmen was the first example I used, since doing something different than Dresden or Marvel, but breaking that trend, invoking Marvel, right? We were arguing about like Infinity War, right? There's literally an Avengers level threat in Wakanda. Where the fuck's a Wakanda, for starters, right? And the second thing is like Nick Fury didn't know what was going on in Wakanda, and he was literally in New York, obviously. So like, what do you think that like, in the Chicago area, I think the lid's going to be off in a lot of ways, right? But if you're like, tell me what a New Yorker knows about what happened in Chicago, absolutely heebie-jeebies makes sense. Like there's no way that you're going to convince a New Yorker something that 90% of Chicagoans aren't even sold on, right? Now and to be clear, like I'm arguing pretty hard for the opposition right now, but I do wish the Masquerade had been blown off. I feel like that was kind of what was sold to us in a lot of the interviews and that sort of thing, is that it was going away. But at the same time, I can totally buy, the official line, kind of covering it up. So
Every Masquerade that is kept up by a system is going to have its damage control. That's what these heebie-jeebies are, as well as any of the other descriptive. There was gas blow. Terrorists are easier to deal with, magic titans, but whether the lay people of Chicago are completely aware of what's behind the Masquerade or not, the government of, I say the U.S. at least, is probably not buying any of that, because as paranoid as they're going to be, they're going to say, what was this and how do we kill it? And they're not going to but they have to let everyone else be calm enough for life to continue as normal, or normal as possible. Because, nothing can function if everyone is in a panic. And even if 1 million people inside Chicago are freaking out and believing that now all of the monsters are real and I have to prepare, that's only 1 million. Like, what is the population of 1 million versus the rest of the entire U.S. population? That's not even counting the international or the close neighbors or anything like that. But the lie is enough to keep at least people conforming to the lie to continue functioning.
I would imagine the destruction wouldn't really match any like real weapons or anything with the eye and stuff. But again, that would be more. The government already knows anyway, right? Just not everybody in the government know, but the government has a department that's like supernatural shit. So they already know.
The librarians. Yeah. Well, and that would be the thing, like, towards director's point, I was curious about is like, do you really think that the president knows? Do you really think that a bunch of congressional members know? Or do you think that's stuck in a committee somewhere and the librarian's job is literally to lie to fucking everybody?
It's like the Independence Day movie from with Will Smith of like, the president didn't know that there were aliens in Area 51. That's what I assume that it'd be in his style. That is what Jim is going to go with.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Right. Like, he doesn't, like, I don't know. He, at this point, obviously, the lid is off to a point, right? Like we've at least burped the Tupperware or something, right? Like the president can't not know that thousands of his citizens and several skyscrapers got leveled in Chicago, right? But does he know the specific details? Like, that's kind of the question, right? He knows something big has gone down. He knows that the National Guard's getting deployed, which that's a governor level, decision anyway. Stuff like that. He knows FEMA's getting deployed. But does he know that it's not the heebie-jeebies? He's probably being fed the exact same line that everybody else is. And he's probably like, issuing decrees and mobilizing task force to find out who this terrorist cell is so that they can clamp down on it. But he doesn't know that they were spooky.
I guess,
and therefore,
kind of like in most media, the president kind of is briefed on the top secret stuff when they come into office. This would probably include the existence of the supernatural.
Possibly,
but there is also media blacklist comes to mind for me because I've been watching that where the president seems like he's just kept in the dark and fed on bullshit, and other people are running the show behind.
The president's there for 4 to 8 years, but everyone else inside Washington, D.C., they might be there for most of their lifetime. They're the ones who are going to know probably more. The people who are enshrined in the Department of Defense for 30 years, that's the guy who's going to know everything. And they're going to dole it out to the president.
Yeah, going back to your Independence Day example, right? Like, dude knew because he sat in the post to be able to know that, and then became Minister of Defense or whatever it was, right? So, yeah, so like, but like he wouldn't have even necessarily known if he hadn't sat the correct post, right? It was because like Secretary of Defense, not minister, because we're not in the UK. So Secretary of Defense, but then like the what was the general's title? But like he didn't know, right? So it was like, he's the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff or whatever, right? He didn't know, but the Secretary of Defense did, and so like, obviously it's media and whatever, but like I think there's enough play to kind of understand, like, I really wouldn't expect the president to know this one. I expect him to get watered down just a little bit, just enough. So
I would say, since you brought up the UK, in the UK they for sure don't brief the prime minister because they would just have to do that all the time.
Right. I mean, every 2 months at this
Didn't
rate.
we only do this like 4 weeks ago?
Yeah, 44 days. Now they're doing it.
Yeah.
The lettuce one.
No, yeah, I saw a tweet this morning that was like, my son has lived through like 4 of this minister and 3 of this minister, 2 prime ministers and 2 monarchs. He's 4 months old. Like. Like, holy shit, that's a lot of turnover.
You got it. Maybe she's like a plant for some like other government or like the White Court or something. Like she was efficient. She came in, killed the queen.
Yeah, right.
Killed the queen, tanked the economy, made the party sink in the polls, so the opposing party has like bigger numbers now. Like 44 days of efficiency.
So, right. And it's so bad that they're entertaining Boris Johnson again. So, that's terrible.
Maybe that was the plan all along.
Right.
Who does Laura have control of in the government? We know she's got somebody. She sent in changes, like a destroyer or something to be on nearby the Yucatan, right? That's where Molly and Thomas got evac to.
So that's some sort of admiral in the Pentagon, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, probably someone very high up in the Department of Defense, of like, you will make this calm down because my cities where my food lives is getting freaked out.
Yeah, that was a training drill. I don't know what you're on about. So, or R&R, they just needed to hit a warm port for a minute. So, yeah, no, for sure. Like one of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, an admiral somewhere, almost certainly she's got 1 or more senators and possibly in some key, my brain can't think of all the words today. No, I was thinking like the councils, right there.
The security councils and all that.
Well, yeah, not even that per se. The the boards, like they've got their little breakout groups, right? Where they, like the January 6th commission, right, is an example of that, but it's a more special case. But they've got like, they've got like a defense, I don't know why this word is just escaping me right now. But anyway, they've got like small little groups of like, 6 to 10 senators or whatever that they vote on something before it even goes to the floor. Right. So she's probably got somebody like that where, a committee, a steering committee, right. where she's got people that not only are they a senator, which, there's only 100 of those guys anyway, but they're also in a key committee so that, they can kill a bill before it's even seen the light of day, more or less. That would be my guess. I don't imagine she's got, like a vice president or a president in her pocket, but maybe. And honestly, I think she's probably got an admiral, because that admiral didn't always used to be an admiral. And they probably like to party, and she probably hooked him up with some really high class escorts, so
practicality wise, it's not gonna be in general too many elected officials who could be replaced. Like the president often is rotated, right? Whereas
right.
It's more going to be career people who are there longer, I would imagine.
Admirals are a good admirals and 4-star generals. They're probably good ones to get your claws into. And anyone else that's been there
for 60 years
that like work in the government, that high up, spooks, I guess, leaders of like the FBI, CIA, stuff like that are also in office pretty long usually, right?
That could be a thing. She's got like the deputy director of the CIA who rerouted a destroyer
Homeland
for
Security,
a need to know
NSA.
Mission. Yeah. So
yeah.
Hopefully not the librarians. Hopefully they know better,
Yeah.
So
definitely.
The librarians are like, dude, you're in the book. There's a chapter for you. Fuck off. Like
that would be 3 people who turned her down in a century. She'd be very pissed off.
Right.
Right. It could be that there's government. It could be that there was spooky, like supernatural people who are trying to clean things up and get things to be calm again and believe the lie so everything goes back to normal. And then, like, this topic is, it could just be an interest section between both of them. Like, Lara can tell a general of, you will direct people to pick up all of the tentacles and burn them, and you will not ask questions.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't imagine that her tact in relationship is stern enough to give orders, but I mean, that's what it'll come down to eventually, unless he's into that. Now, not to kink shame, right? So, I could totally see a guy in a high level position needing to be dominated. So,
well, some of it might not necessarily be orders or even blackmail, like the way that a vanilla human can do orders and blackmail, whatever, but she seems to have actual mind magic with the way that she puppets her father around. Like, she just kind of, like, her eyes go a little bit paler, and then he's saying exactly what she wants him to say. That could be exactly it. That is why they're so afraid that Harry had been mind magicked by Lara.
Right.
And I mean, I wonder about the way that the conspiracy theories are always made fun of, like whatever the journal was that Susan was working for, like, she was just talking about real magic. No one believed her. No one has believed her for years and years, or any of the other yellow mags. And therefore, like, even putting the information in front of people for years isn't enough. And so once you've been denying, well, that wasn't a werewolf because how could it be? Magic isn't real. That wasn't a wizard because magic isn't real. That wasn't a Titan because magic isn't real. So I'm believing that I got poisoned.
Yeah.
Once they've been denying it already, it's easier to perpetuate that action into the future.
That might work for like a lot of normal people, but I mean, it's not gonna. It wouldn't work for me, right? Like I do deny it, right? I do deny the supernatural all the time. I have 2 small children. That's not a monster. And even if it is a monster, I'm not going to tell you. However, like I've wrapped it around in my head to the point where it's like, look, man, if magic were real, those guys would be running the place because there's no way that they couldn't. Certainly mind magics, even, evocation. Like if a dude can show up and just melt down a column of soldiers and tanks, that's a kind of power that people would respond to, right? So you either got to believe, ultra conspiracy theory, it's the Illuminati and they're pulling all the strings. They're somehow like mathematically the most and least competent group at the same time, because look at the state of the place. Do you really think that competent people are running the place, right? And so like you've got to wrap your head around stuff like that. However, all of that being said, as a denier myself, right? If I saw a 15-foot tall bronze plated woman walk down the street and nuke a building, I'm gonna be open to a whole new worldview, right? There is just, there's some evidence that you can't deny. And if I'm cleaning up entrails of something in the street, then I think that's where I'm saying like this is hard evidence. So there's, to me, either those people are being swept under the rug or the bodies were, right? But yeah, and you're certainly going to have hundreds, if not thousands, of people that know, and most of them would have been under the banners, right? Those guys know, but they're also not talking about it. Do you really think Dresden's, defenders of the bean are running around on talk shows and being like, "You got to know what I saw, man"? No, because they're also afraid of being labeled as crazy people, and
Exactly.
the official word is the heebie-jeebies.
It self-perpetuates of like maybe someone did see something in Roswell, but that person is now called a crazy person and you don't want to associate with them, and that acts as a measure of conformity. So you don't want to be the weird one in the group, because then they'll stop helping you.
Or it's PTSD, right?
That too.
You're going to tell me that the defenders of the bean didn't they didn't crack up a little bit just seeing all those buildings come down and all of those people dead? Of course they did.
Of
course
really
they did.
wonder
Those poor souls.
if by being in the banner with Harry, that might have given them a little bit more certainty as well as clarity, and maybe not being affected by other things. I need to not hit my mic.
Yes.
It's a black mic on a black table. I cannot see it. It's the and then because they had this piece of something that was real, they have the bean that he stuck to their chest, like carrying that around as a token. That can be galvanizing to like, no, this was real. I have this thing and it's proof, even though no one else believed it because they weren't in with the banner with him.
Right. Well, yeah, because I mean, a big part of the banner is calming her troops, right? Or Dresden's troops by proxy, and then panicking the other ones, right? And so, like, honestly, these guys probably, like, don't get me wrong, I can't see a way of around them getting trauma, but to call, like maybe PTSD isn't the right word because they were able to handle it in the moment, because that's part of what the banner is supposed to do.
Could be that how Harry feels everything. Like you said, it's more than he just feels it. He takes some percentage of what they feel. It's less intense for them. That could be a thing. I think. I mean, regardless, they still experience what they experience. It has to be traumatic, but maybe if he took half or something like onto himself, and he's already a big ball of trauma anyway.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, think of it like the Nagloshi, right? That obviously traumatized him in the moment pretty much indelibly because he saw it with his sight, but he's not necessarily like running around with it on his sleeve at the same time, right? So like, what I'm saying is like it definitely happened. There's definitely going to be ramifications for your normal person, I think, but I think there's a difference between it being like, like, yes, that happened, and like it's still being active for them, right? And the more I talk about it, like I can't imagine being one of the defenders of the bean and not being like the guy up at all hours of the night with his shotgun checking on every little thump and lump waiting for them to come back, so maybe that's there too. But I'm just saying, like, I could also see like the banner helping with that, because that was kind of the job of it. Like, it's certainly cutting down on the supernatural spook factor. Like some of the creatures are gonna, they're gonna emanate that aura of menace and fear, and it was cutting through on that, mainly. But anyway.
Yeah. So, I mean, that still only accounts for maybe like 100 people, right? At most.
Right.
And that
a couple hundred, but sure.
And then there was more, I guess, that maybe some work of the Paranet, as well as even what Marcone was setting up. And just little things that like maybe Molly as the rag lady and everyone was doing at the BFG that was giving people enough an inkling that something is different. So then when something big happened, they are more likely to believe it, but they're still just not going to admit it to everyone full up front. And some people, like the idiot in the law, is going to just buy it heebie-jeebies all the way. The fact that there was a good point in the thread I was referencing to make this, that there was no video evidence because of all of the magic running around. Aya Baylor also specifically destroyed a lot of electronics. But even with video evidence, they didn't believe the Lugaroo. They thought that has to be fake. It can't be real. And then the video disappeared. Ooh, spooky. Maybe that'll come back really soon as to what or why, and talking more about Masquerade in future books. And hopefully in 12 months, if someone is smart enough to ask a few questions to the right people.
So there's no hope of that.
Yeah. But that, like, it could be that there's been enough groundwork of shit's been weird. Like there was a lot of weirdness and like Grave Peril there was just an extra amount of spooky things going on, and it's been building. The crazy weather that was in Summer Night, the Dark Hollow that scared a lot of people and almost ate them in book 7, and then just on and on. Maybe there is enough that a larger proportion of the population is understanding, maybe even accepting, but they still don't know what to do. And because the lie is probably being put top down on them, they can't act out against it without being ostracized. And they might need, like, who do I go to ask for help with this? And eventually they'll probably land up at Harry. But it'll take a few months.
Right. And I think we're going to start seeing some of that, I'm hoping, with, Castle Dresden, where, he's gathering those people. Like it starts out with the refugees from his neighborhood. And then, you definitely, I mean, we saw that in the law, right? If you need help, you go to the police, find a lawyer, whatever. But if you need a miracle, you go to Harry Dresden, right? So that word is starting to get out there, certainly, but he's still just one dude,
And the good people, Molly's doing more of that,
right.
Seeding more of that. It's like this given to you by Wizard Dresden, and she is building up his reputation. It was already being built up, and then she had to do the rag lady as he left. But like he is going to have a dominion over Chicago to rival Baron Marcone, and
right.
it's going to be something that people are going to eventually have an answer of, who do I turn to when it's this kind of problem. And then there's also people like the lawyer of the law that, like, he knows about it, and he knows just how far away to stand to be not in the blast radius. Because he's smart,
right?
And Dresden's not.
Well, and one of the other comments that started a mini thread in this initial thread was just like, look at Rudolph, right? Like, dude was there when his whole precinct got torn up by a werewolf, and he was standing practically at ground zero in Chicago and still didn't believe what was going on, right? I don't necessarily think he's representative and obligatory. Fuck Rudolph, right? However, all of that being said, like, all of these things chip away at it, right? And so just break down the math. Like, how much do people believe no matter what? How much do people speak out about it? How much do people just not even believe a little bit? How much do people not believe at all? How much people flat out deny it, like Rudolph? And suddenly I feel like, yeah, I mean, you probably, maybe it's 50-50. Let's go and say like 50 people are open to thinking like, hey, maybe something weird is going on, or more, right? Anywhere from something weird is definitely going on all the way up to I saw it with my own eyes. And then you've got 50% of people just being like, no, I'm pretty sure nothing's going on, all the way down to a Loup-Garou is trying to eat me, and I'm pretty sure this is really good special effects, or something like that. Because you've got, Rudolph and what Travis was the guy from the law, where they just like flat out deny it.
Trip.
Trip. There we go. Yeah. Sorry.
Travis. Make it
and
even
Trip,
dumber.
I think. Yeah. Right. No, I mean, they're just straight out flat denying the evidence of their senses, right? Which I feel like there's a lot of that going on right now anyway. But yeah, so it just the room is there. I don't like it. I would have much preferred, to find out that what's the FBI guy we wanted to see?
Tilly.
Yeah, much rather have seen Tilly in the middle of it, right? Much rather have seen him and his squad of dudes just being like, Dresden, this is happening. Why can no?
Explain.
Like I'm 3 days from retirement. I don't want to be seeing this right now, but like I definitely wanted to see more new people know what's going on. I think we get a little bit of that, right? Because at the end of the law, we see the officer being, with his little thing, just kind of like hat tip him and move on with his day and whatever. So I think the splintering is starting there. I was hoping for, nuclear bomb, like this is out of the bag, and it really should be. But, I feel like there's enough wiggle room.
I get why, in one way, it should be that cat's out of the bag and everyone knows, but at the same time, there was a council of supernatural beings of saying we must contain this because as soon as the humans know, they're going to come after us because they're going to be scared. And once they are in a group and they are scared, they are deadly. And so the fairy courts, Marcone, Vaterung, and Lara are all in the same room of talking like, we have to calm them down. And then Justin says, not only do you have to calm them down, you have to pay reparations for the shit you brought to them.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of a matter of time at this point.
Yes, but if it is a little bit longer, it will probably be easier rather than all at once. And then like there's so much of a heavy reaction to it. So by being softer about the reveal to people, or at least so that they have time to start accepting it, we might get more people that are like just going to start joining the Paranet or like interacting with how do I do this safely and how do I get information and not nothing is real. Everything's too scary. I'm going to do the most disastrous things I could do because why not?
BFA has, or not BFA, what's the bigger part
BFG.
BFG. It's got to be like that's the point where for sure it's out of the bag there. At the start of the start of that trilogy, that's probably where, everybody
You're saying
knows.
the BAT then?
Yeah, BAT, sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe. It could be. If it's
I think
big
it'll
apocalypse.
happen before then. Like
that's the latest.
I mean,
start to kick that off.
Sure.
At the latest.
Well, because one of the next ones for sure is like the kaiju fight again. Like unless he's having it out in the middle of the Pacific or something like that.
And it's a kaiju fight, right? So that should be out in the Pacific.
There are two skyscrapers punching each other. I think somebody's going to notice, but at the same time, like.
I mean, you would think people would notice a big hand sticking out of the plant in the Marvel, but I feel like we haven't talked about that since the movie.
They've referenced it very minorly in She-Hulk. That's okay.
I haven't gotten to that yet.
It's like the worst reference ever. She's literally like looking at a website with like news articles and there's like a headline about it. It's not at all acknowledged. So yeah, okay. I agree with you on that. Like there should be like a new resort popping up at a minimum. Imagine the heights of dives that you could nail off of that thing. True. So but yeah. No, it's tough. I want to believe, I want to see people come off the chain. I think maybe some of the cracks are there, and obviously who's been in the inner circle is widened, right? And then, I think the next big one, like if something else doesn't happen, right, I think the next big one's going to be the kaiju fight. And that might be the one where it's like internationally recognized, where they're like, no, wait a minute, like we can't sweep that one under the rug because now the French know. Or whoever. So, like, I mean, I guess they could have a kaiju fight in like Lake Michigan, but
it's closer to home that way.
Yeah, save on airfare. So
yeah, but I think you said that there's a naval carrier that has to be involved in that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I always envisioned ocean that might be part of it. So
yeah,
but,
we'll see.
Yeah, because that's another one. You got a couple of thousand seamen who have totally seen it now, sailors and all of their accompanying. I mean, and granted, like unless something weird is going on, which of course something weird might be going on, that carrier is probably not alone. So it's probably got its battle group with it, So, oh man, are we going to get 1997 Godzilla? This is fantastic. So, submarines
movie.
running into each other and.
Mm. Oh man, that's like that. I remember liking that movie so much as a kid, but when we rewatched it, I was like, "Wow, this sucked so much worse than I thought."
Yeah, I saw it as a kid, so I got a soft spot for it, but it's not aged well, so.
I thought I would like it more as well. I think we talked about that when we did that episode.
Yeah, we did. Just like, wow, I was like, is Matthew Broderick a good actor? I can't tell anymore.
Right.
God. But I mean, that is in Jim's style. To reference movies, to steal from the media that he's loved for a long time, good or bad. So that is possibly what we're going to get. And just always, is the kaiju the same as the dragon, or is the kaiju something different? Because of course you could use that word for, well, it's a big giant monster.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we're taking him at, there is a big giant monster, and in the Dresden verse, we've only seen a very small handful of giant monster examples, right? Like if you want to take Warcry, I think the Shoggoth would count in its true form, so that would be really bad. Obviously, Faravax would count, and possibly his dragon sibling, whatever their relationship would be. And then, I think we've been hinted at Cthulhu. I personally take it as a hint at Cthulhu. Now that one would kind of disappoint me because
Cthulhu.
Yeah, right. But I personally think, like there's much better, cooler, and broader mythology in the mythos than just using Cthulhu. Like it's okay that he's a poster child, but you can talk about the other things. So that's why I'm super pumped that the Hounds of Tindalos made an appearance and Shoggoths and that sort of thing. Because the Hounds are like one of my favorite stories because it's so great. And that's not even H.P. Lovecraft either, but yeah, like as far as like big giant monsters, like I mean the Titan's like the biggest thing he's fought directly, right?
Yeah,
so
the Jotun might have been, I can't remember the description, they
true.
might have even been taller than her.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I forgot
I think the biggest
Murphy did that one, but
we did get to see the Einherjar like have a great time against them though.
I'm being murdered. This is fantastic.
I think the biggest thing is the Janasqua, Blood on his Soul, as Denarian.
I mean, he was like big, but I thought of him like van sized or something. Maybe like a little bigger, not like a monster truck. Maybe not like a building, right? Like the Titan is like a small house is chasing you. The Jotuns is definitely like 2 or 3 stories, I would imagine, depending, at least 2. But certainly the kaiju, I'm thinking, skyscrapers. I'm thinking Godzilla. Yeah. Right. So like, it's the breakdown of it's like D&D sizes, right? You've got huge, which is, very big. And then once you get to colossal, it's just like, it's everything that's like 5 stories and up. So there's quite a lot of space in there for monsters. So.
I just remember the description, or like when I think back on it, as if when he transformed, he was like really, really big.
Yeah.
Blood on the Soul,
right?
But yeah.
Well, plus Ursil, the Ursil part made him even bigger, and
I transformed.
I do remember thinking of that as being like he might be like 20 feet tall, even when he's like hunched over in his gorilla form or bear form. It's just he was stuck in Hades, and therefore I didn't like think of it. Always thinking of the Titans out in Chicago, the Jotuns out in Chicago, the Shoggoth in Iowa, I guess. But
right, and even that Shoggoth was kind of small. Like they showed one in the flashback to like Babylon being eaten, right? And it was just like was big. Babylon was engulfed, like the whole thing. It's just like okay then. So, which would be exceedingly bad, and I have no idea how he would fight one that large. So, now I'm kind of on team that because I have no idea how he would get out of that. Like he would need to ride Faravax into battle at that point. So,
That sounds uncomfortable.
oh yeah, I mean, yeah, Faravax is for sure going to eat you after this, so you better win. So,
Mm. Well, I'm sure. How would Dresden fight a Shoggoth? It'd probably be somewhere inside the answers to questions he hasn't asked yet.
oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Really needs
yeah.
to start asking some questions.
Yeah, it probably turns out that like they just can't even grab him or something like that, and so he could just use his shield to push them back or something like that. But
Yeah, animating a landmark, and then on the Masquerade side, if you animate a landmark to fight any form of kaiju or Cthulhu or whatever, you have to explain if you're trying to continue the Masquerade. How did the landmark get there, wherever that is? I mean, we
Right.
already had the issue with like Sue ended up on the college
I was going to
campus
say, like,
somehow, but we just blamed it on teenage hooligans.
while I totally dig seeing the Statue of Liberty with her Captain America shield fight a kaiju, right? I feel like we've already like graced this a little bit with the Sioux and Bob animating the lions in Chicago. So, and I'm really not sure what other big thing, like, does he animate the bean? Obviously he's a knight of the bean, so he animates the bean, which it turns into an amorphous Quicksilver like creature that to fight a giant Shoggoth in Lake Michigan. It's a very confusing fight, but we're rooting for the silver one. So but like I'm like, what else in Chicago would he animate?
Justin?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah,
I get to writing.
no, I I don't do enough slash fiction to get anywhere in that group, so
I think there are people who can give you pointers for that.
yeah, I was like, all I have to do is throw some tension between Marcone and Dresden, and I guess I'm in. So, but somebody's hand
True.
stays too long. They look
People
a
are
little
already
too
getting
long.
excited with the trailer that they were changing in the.
I know. So,
Yeah. Guy did a great job though. And Marcone was perfect casting. Let's see. Back to formerly Masquerade ideas.
This he would animate his castle. So I think I've seen this version of Lego where they've got like the giant robot castles and then punch and then because of course the Twilataig they were actually well known for their mecha back several hundred years ago. So all of their castles are secretly.
I probably do bad things to the plumbing. Might be a one-time use spell. That's a good way of getting him poor and homeless again, though.
Yeah.
Haven't we done that? Can't we? Let's have research with Cherry for.
That'd be boring. He has to worry about bills and like.
Yeah, that's what he does right now.
Doing his laundry.
To manage the books.
That's boring.
I have to. Yeah, but like make him like he's gonna be the Wizard of Chicago now, right? Like it's gonna be his domain. He's seceded from the White Council.
But you got to start to realize that Harry having titles and power does not bestow money. He's not a landed title holder. That's how those guys made money back in the day. Just because he's the Wizard of Chicago or he, the Baron or anything like that. What are his enterprises? What are his assets?
He doesn't have any investments.
Yeah, right. Like
you'll steal some
the
more
castle
diamonds from Hades. Anything.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure that's.
That's a fun weekend.
Maybe you can just go, "Hey, yo, Hades, listen, I need some cash, right?" Like,
right.
What would probably work better is leave the difficult things to figure out to Mab and tell Mab, I need $1 million to make Chicago great again.
I'll be like, that's an expense account. What about me?
Exactly.
So let me play Mab for a second. Thank you very much for asking, Dresden. Let me ask you a question. How is that my fucking problem? So it's Mab who she's not giving him shit for nothing. Like she doesn't even care about the money. She's just not giving him it.
Right.
When he was like,
if he got her involved in a spat because someone hit his car, he can get her to give him money to do upkeep on the castle, to keep people fed, to be a powerful person in Chicago. He just needs a lot of money for it.
I cannot believe
he
he got away with involving Map there. I
It was
cannot.
the
believe
flimsiest excuse.
He got away with
well,
it.
and everybody knew it, but yeah, he damaged the company car. I mean, so that being said, I would use that as leverage, right? It'd be like, Mab, if you give me $1 million, I won't bother you with any inane bullshit for a year. And she'd be like, done and done. That is a deal well worth
Here's
it.
an
So,
MX.
yeah, right.
But this is only going to last like 2 days. I guess you better start withdrawing. I mean, I don't know. There's $1 million on there.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, he's getting married to Laura. Laura is rich. Laura can be
Yes.
his bank. I'm gonna stop
Laura-
talking right now.
Laura
Yeah.
is, for all intents and purposes, has unlimited funds, right?
Exactly.
Well, yeah. I mean, which version are we going with, though, right? Because from my perspective, that might work in the sense that I think that she actually has a thing for him. So if he actually asked her, which is never going to happen, then whatever, she would probably do it, but otherwise, like, again, I think that's going to be just as inaccessible. So,
And right, because it would be smart for her to do a very strict prenup so that he doesn't ruin all of her stuff and can make Mab pay for when he does ruin the villa for the third time.
you're overthinking this still.
Yeah.
The prenup is Dresden. If you fucking cross me, I'll eat you, literally. So
Laura lives in the world
Like-
of bureaucrats. Mab lives in the world
I
of
know.
fairy. The overlap is almost a complete circle. They are going to
Yeah.
have pages and pages and pages of
well, and
what
they
is
talk
allowed and
about
what
the
is not allowed.
lawyers.
Yeah,
you know,
they already have lawyers
Yeah.
trying to negotiate their
Yeah.
first date. The prenup is going to be 300 pages long, and he's not going to read it, and it's going to get him in trouble.
Now, luckily, that's a future books problem because he may or may not actually get married in the first place, right?
Right.
So,
Well,
but
Just like he won't ask questions, he will likely not read an important legal document that pertains to his life.
right.
He'll tell
Mab is
her,
like, I sent you a copy. It was your wedding gift. Why didn't you read it? Like,
I needed to start a fire, and
There was a building. It was not on fire yet. I had to correct that.
exactly.
And wouldn't you know it, 300 pages worth of kindling.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, honestly, right now, I'm just sitting. We're talking about the marriage and stuff. I'm just missing EG while everybody else of our listeners like, oh, Murphy, the horror, and EG will just sit here and argue as to how big an upgrade this is. Peach Posh
mean-
Murphy, this is much better.
Murphy was not a millionaire.
she's also not quasi-immortal and a sex goddess. So,
Not supernaturally good at sex.
She also probably
Yeah.
wasn't going to do mind magic on him. There's some pros and cons here.
well,
but
yeah.
if Thomas can have a credit card that is worth anything for 24 hours, Dresden can have one too.
Yeah, but you have to keep in mind, Dresden doesn't have a cell phone because that would be too powerful for the plot.
That's true. Okay, so
Dresden's
Dresden
not getting
cannot have a
access to
credit
the
card.
money.
Dresden can
Yes.
have a checking account and write checks.
Right. Well, I mean, okay, so notwithstanding the technological limitations of him holding a credit card, I'm just saying
It's
he's
good
not
for
getting
like
access to
daily.
the money. Like, so.
Or no, he can give the credit card to Will because Will can use credit cards as long as he's not too close to
Right.
Dresden.
What's the joke in one of the books where it's like, is it Best Buy who just does not understand that he does not want technology?
I think it was Circuit City before they went out
Yeah.
of town. Or yeah,
Right. Out of business. Yeah.
He's like, no, I don't want it. I don't need these magazines. I don't buy technology. And we don't understand here.
The-
Take another pamphlet about computers.
mail ads are really stupid because I live in an apartment and I keep getting ads for let's install solar panels or let's replace your windows. And I swear it's a really good price. Like, you sent this to an apartment complex. Like, hundreds of people who live here do not own our own place. Save your
You
money
could-
and send it to someone who does.
You could improve your own place that you rent, but I don't know why you necessarily would.
It's a complex building, like the whole
Yeah.
building. It's not like a house that I'm renting. I'm renting the third floor of an apartment.
I mean,
Have
I'm
you
renting an
never
apartment.
seen-
I could change my kitchen if I wanted to, for example.
No. This is America. We're freer than you, but we can't do that. So anyway, have you ever seen ads for old people medicine? It's called, they're just carpet bombing the place with ads. Like, it doesn't matter. So, They don't hire the people to spend the extra man hours to be like, oh yes, please don't send it to this address if it's an apartment building.
Do you not have
please-
like a list you can put yourself on? We do here where it's like, I don't want ads, and then they're legally not allowed to send you ads.
I don't know.
You can theoretically ask for it because like there's a couple of companies that usually manage those lists, but it's not really a guaranteed thing. So
Yeah.
Okay, here it's like if you're on that
just-
list and they are not allowed to, and they get big
I mean, I'm
fines
on
for
lists
it.
not to get robocalls, but that still fucking happens.
yeah.
Um,
Well, Congress is actually looking into that theoretically.
they've
though.
been doing that for years. I'll believe it
So-
when I see it.
Well, the
I'd had
problem is those
totally-
assholes are overseas. So
Political thing ever. I'll believe it when I see it, when they actually get it done.
yeah.
But this gives me an idea about the Masquerade. Like, there's gonna be a lawyer out there that's sending out ads to everyone and all of the mailers and buying out billboards. Like, did you see something weird on this day? Maybe you're some form of class action laws. I'm just using lawyer mumbo jumbo because I don't actually know. But
You
there's
might
going to
be
be some
entitled
form
for
of
compensation for
Yeah,
heebie-jeebies
equivalent
exposure.
of ambulance chasers for the battleground and all of that. And that's going to get some people in one place for good or for bad. But someone's going to be chasing money. And therefore, they're going to be putting out ads, and then there's going to be even more conspiracies, and there's going to be more like Twitter and dark web and something. But there will be people trying to make money on it, guaranteed.
Obviously, you got Ron Perlman running around collecting a bunch of tentacles and stuff. And was that too subtle a reference? Anyway,
No.
So
Maybe.
Okay.
Well, unless it was
Pacific
for,
Rim?
Pacific, yeah.
yeah. So I was so
If you-
excited he was in that
if you
movie
really
and
wanted to
so
sell it-
disappointed with his role.
If you really wanted to sell it, you should have been like in his silver tip boots. Then I would
Right.
have. Then I for sure would have gotten that.
Masquerade. It's kind of important, and it's very real.
Yeah.
Because people will do that for whatever it is that they don't want to deal with, because the story that they tell themselves is better than the fears of which they do not have answers to. And it's probably slipping, but people don't want it to. And Supernatural certainly doesn't want it to, because they will be the next target, because all the things that the people are afraid of, especially historically, is that group of people. All of the things from, like, even just pulling from like the British Isles I'm a little bit more familiar with, of like the Red Cap, that had haunted people for years, hundreds of years. That guy's real. And like, he hurt my great grandfather. I'm going to go kill him. It's going to happen. Yeah. I'm excited for it to slip off entirely, if you cannot tell, but
Yeah.
it'll take a while.
Yep. So splintering, yes. Should have been blown wide open, probably. We want it to go, totally.
We want it to go.
But, you know, I guess we're still waiting. So,
We'll get there.
I mean, there are urban fantasy books where just like the Masquerade has fallen. That's like how the world is set up, right? And those are interesting, and I really wanted to see that for Dresden as well, because we've had the
It's
one
not
thing. It would be
always-
cool to just see it like fully fall off.
Right. Well, then,
Yeah.
you know, there are pockets of like just remembering like Maggie's school that she's going to go to, the one that Erwin had gone to. It's a Hogwarts for people of whatever kind, and there are pockets of, yeah, everything of this is real. You still have to behave, and that's an important thing for kids to learn.
Yep.
Getting bone jokes in the comments. They're distracting.
got the tangent. Yeah. So I've been watching it. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you certainly have pockets, but I mean that academy is, you know, catered towards more like spooky side types of kids and stuff too. But yeah, I think the Masquerade finally slipping in the Dresden Files is going to be a really bad time for everybody, which is why, of course, even the immortal types are terrified of it, right? They were like, do you want another Inquisition? Because I don't. And that was hundreds of years ago. You know, so it's just generally a pain for them to be able to move around and do what they need to be doing, you know, and, you know, obviously it's going to get loads of people killed on both sides, you know, so, you know, it's funny, Andreas talking about other books that, you know, the Masquerade ended, like the one that popped into my head immediately actually was like the Vampire Wars. What was the name of that series, Andreas, that you had me
Vampire
reading?
Empire or something.
Yeah, the Vampire Empire. And it was like, yeah, the Masquerade fell off then too. And it was generally a bad time for everybody. So it doesn't always just work out. Like, I think the ones where it tends to work out is like the Masquerade fell a long time ago or never really existed. And so you have more like Constantine, right? Where it's like, I mean, there the Masquerade is still there, but obviously like there's bars and things like that where people go to, and they're
That's
able
much
to
like
mix
Dresden.
openly.
I feel like Constantine Dresden. That's like on a similar kind of level.
Yeah.
There's a book series called Kate Daniels that I used to read once upon a time, where it's like the Masquerade has fallen by magic, returning to the world, and it's kind of semi-post-apocalyptic in a way.
I've
Marcia
heard
Thompson.
conflicting things about that series.
It started. I kind of lost interest, so I haven't actually finished the last 2 books. But it started decent.
So, I mean, True Blood was specifically about vampires got revealed because they were able to have synthetic blood, and therefore they don't need to be hunting people anymore. They can be open, and then slowly, like, werewolves started showing themselves, and fairies and things like that.
Shifter, yeah.
Mercy Thompson, I think, had a similar.
Well. A very good book series where it's like, I think the first thing that comes out is
fairies.
It's fairies, and then it's werewolves, and then the vampires are still hiding.
Yeah, because they're eating people. But the fairy, there was a fairy that was.
Oh, we've got synthetic blood now. All's forgiven, right? Like, yeah, no. Like, that's how I think that would go down.
But the Mercy Thompson one I thought was funny because like a fairy was accused of murdering someone with like an iron garden trowel, and he had to prove that he couldn't touch it because he was a fairy, and that was their way of revealing to everyone that fairies exist. And then the rest of the Masquerade was still pretty much up for. I was like, this didn't change the world the way I expected it to. I don't know. I mean, it's a fun series when I was reading it, at least.
It's very good. Have you read the spin-off series as well? It's excellent.
Yeah, I read a handful of the books, and I've just not gotten back to it.
Okay, so it's like my favorite urban fantasy world outside Dresden. It's Mercy Thompson. Highly recommend.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think we're at an hour now.
Yeah, and we're completely off topic.
I would like to remind people, maybe Alex can put this on Twitter or in the show notes or something. For next week, we're watching some spooky movies of one variety or another. If people want to tune in and have watched them when we discuss them, we could potentially put a list out there. We'll put it on our Discord, which you have to be a member on our Patreon to join in on.
Yes, I will do something of that. I have to make my second choice, though. So to wait until then.
Yep. Are you still waiting on a second choice?
Yeah, I haven't.
So can I recommend this movie called Cabin in the Woods, because it really should have made the list. And
it was already on someone else's list.
It was on my original when we did horror scary movies or whatever originally.
Really? Did we?
Yeah. I've already given my disparaging comments about Joss Whedon about that movie.
No, I always for you, but okay. Well, then I'm glad I picked what I picked because, like it was very close that it was going to be Hocus Pocus and Cabin in the Woods because I didn't think anybody had seen those hardly, but nobody was going to like Hocus Pocus because you're all too old and cynical now, and you hate Joss Whedon, which is why that was going to make the list. But I'm glad I went with Tremors. Then
has come out.
Yes, that's part of why. But Hocus Pocus is a rewatch every year, like that
for Americans.
Why not anybody else? You don't like witches trying to eat
kids?
It's not a tradition
here. It's not.
You don't.
We don't. We've started to do Halloween, much to my chagrin.
Yeah. It's fun.
Yeah.
So
Halloween's fun.
I'm a nerd. One of the
different time of year.
One of the primary reasons why I like being a nerd is because I get to dress up all day, every day, instead of just once a year on Halloween. So, like, you should just embrace that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so Tremors in the Thing. Good luck, guys. So
it's not your movies I have an issues with. We'll get to that next week.